I'm going to tell you my predictions, but I want to say this first, if you allow me to. This journey didn't start in 2018 when I came to YouTube and I started talking about Bad Boy and Diddy and his character.
We gather outside Manhattan Federal Court on a humid July morning, and from the moment Gene Deal steps to the microphone, the atmosphere turns electric. We watch him square his shoulders, glance at the sea of cameras, and say in a steady tone that Sean Diddy Combs will never walk free again. The words land like a stone dropped in still water, ripples spreading through reporters, live streamers, and curious onlookers who lean in to catch every syllable. Gene is more than a bystander. He served as Combs' bodyguard during some of the most lucrative years of bad boy entertainment, and he presents himself now as a man determined to pull the last curtain on a mogul who built an empire on platinum hits and glossy branding. We listen closely because when a former insider claims a life sentence is inevitable, the claim demands scrutiny.
This journey started right after the Notorious Big was murdered, and even before then. But me conversating and talking about Diddy in the streets of New York was verified by somebody who actually came home, and that was Roger Bonds in probably 2007 or 2008, because Roger Bonds was a dude in the street getting money.
We track the reactions around us in real time. A veteran court reporter mutters into a digital recorder, a pair of social media commentators fire off quick posts, and two network correspondents already on live feeds pivot their scripts mid-sentence to quote Gene's statement. This is the hook of the day's coverage and possibly of the entire summer trial. A once trusted guard predicts a permanent lockup for the artist who turned party anthems into multi-million-dollar holdings across clothing and television. The temperature is high, the stakes are higher, and we feel the combined tension of celebrity fascination and criminal consequence settle over Foley Square like low cloud cover.
Dishonest, violent, horrible. A promiscuous swinger who lied to and cheated on multiple partners. Incredibly, that's how Sean Diddy Combs' own lawyers described the billionaire music mogul, currently facing serious trafficking charges in a New York court.
We peer through the doors as proceedings begin upstairs, where prosecutors lay out charges that include racketeering conspiracy, transporting companions across state lines for intimate encounters, and running a coordinated operation that allegedly blended musical glamour with intimidation tactics. The maximum penalties stretch to life behind bars, and we note that if jurors agree on every count, Combs could join the small roster of entertainment figures who watched fortune and fame dissolve under federal judgment. Gene's prediction suddenly feels less dramatic and more plausible, and we keep one eye on the corridor clock and the other on a parade of witnesses scheduled for the next round of testimony.
Are you surprised by the evidence that's already coming out in the criminal trial?
No, I'm not surprised. I experienced some of those things. Witnessed violence.
We spend the lunch break revisiting the star players. Cassie Ventura, the former partner whose civil lawsuit rocked the industry late last year, has already painted a picture of marathon freak-offs involving outside participants, mood-altering substances, and hotel suites reserved under the alias Frank Black. Kid Cudi followed her to the stand, recounting a moment when a flaming bottle hit his parked vehicle, an incident he believes was retaliation for distancing himself from Combs' circle. Each account builds on the last, and we notice jurors paying careful attention to the pattern: private gatherings, alleged threats, hush arrangements, and sudden settlements. We also revisit the sensational rumor of a blackmail vault, an alleged collection of recorded material said to feature recognizable names engaged in compromising scenarios. Prosecutors have not introduced the vault as formal evidence, yet witnesses refer to missing hard drives and studio security logs that keep that rumor alive in every post-hearing recap. We shift to the day's secondary storyline developing on the sidewalk. A YouTuber known as Donat spends the morning provoking Gene Deal, calling him Uncle Phil and questioning his sincerity. A brief scuffle follows. Conflicting accounts swirl. Some claim Gene swung first and sent Donat to the pavement. Others insist Gene merely reached for Donat's heavy gold chain. Courthouse deputies review video angles, find no clear punch, and ask Gene to stay away for several days. We view the incident not only as click-friendly drama, but as an illustration of how volatile public spaces have become in this trial, with reputations, social media profits, and personal tempers constantly colliding. The absence of definitive footage leaves the event open to interpretation, giving online commentators fodder for endless thumbnail teasers.
When I start talking about Puff's character and the dude that he was, it was after Big got murdered. Even though I was still working for Bad Boy, I still was talking about who this cat was. Like I tried to tell y'all, they needed me more than I needed them.
Inside the courtroom that same afternoon, Gene sits quietly behind the prosecution table, avoiding questions about whether he ever attended those late-night gatherings he now condemns. When confronted outside by another live streamer about an unverified claim involving minors back in 2004, he lowers his gaze and walks away. We file that reaction as significant. Silence can be damning, exculpatory, or simply the only legal advice worth following. Either way, his refusal to address the accusation elevates the conversation about how close even whistleblowers may have stood to the alleged wrongdoing.
A lot of these guys who come on this internet, they don't know. Bruh, they don't know that I was a New York State parole officer. I ran Elite Investigation. I ran Tiana Towers, Eastchester Housing, Tiana Towers, and Lampert Housing, doing the security teams around there. I ran clubs.
We return to trial strategy, where the defense team has adopted a straightforward frame. Combs pursued a consensual swingers lifestyle, and the government is stretching criminal law to punish unconventional intimacy. To bolster that argument, the lawyers position Cassie and other witnesses as motivated by headline value and financial payout, yet they avoid putting character witnesses on the stand, apparently fearing cross-examination about topics as granular as hotel invoices and as serious as potential hush arrangements. We view that absence of supportive testimony as a tactical retreat that leaves jurors comparing the volume of prosecution exhibits to little more than closing rhetoric from Combs' counsel.
How many people came through his orbit? How many people could this have happened to? And how did he get away with it for so long?
The stakes increase as deliberations near. We monitor jurors' body language, the clusters of note passing, and the repeated requests for transcript excerpts. The panel asks to review Cassie's recollection of an LA hotel video that became national news after its release on cable television. They also seek portions of escort Daniel Phillips' account describing Cassie terrified in a Midtown suite. Those requests tell us jurors are chasing a consistent thread, repeated intimidation connected to alleged enterprise-level control. In a racketeering case, pattern is everything, and every detail they read moves them toward or away from a sweeping guilty verdict. As the trial edges into its second phase, we widen our lens to the larger ecosystem that made Combs' empire possible. Assistants have testified about scouting hotel rooms, arranging transport for private companions, and wiring cash from company accounts. A former security employee describes an internal culture of loyalty enforced through favors and fear. We examine the possibility, raised quietly in legal blogs, that Gene's shift from employee to outspoken critic coincided with cooperation agreements signed under seal. Could he have collected evidence on trips, phone calls, or backstage events years before going public on podcasts? Federal filings remain sealed on that point, but we note the timeline. Gene's emergence as a prolific interviewer in 2018, civil cases erupting in 2023, and an unsealed indictment in 2024. The overlap suggests at least an informal channel of information between the man who once watched the doors and the investigators now pushing for a life sentence.
People want to shut me up and people want me to be quiet because I tell guys it's all right to go to work every day. It's all right to get your education. It's all right to be somebody positive in the community. It's all right to hang out with dudes who call themselves street dudes, and you ain't gotta be a street dude to do it.
Away from the courthouse, the family dynamic offers another layer. Christian King Combs releases a new track titled Diddy Free, partnering with Ye as executive producer. The hook vows no sleep till we see Diddy free, and the verses target critics, witnesses, and what the younger Combs describes as a smear campaign. We stream the EP, noting its midnight drop aligns to the day closing arguments began. Christian's public appearance in a free Sean Combs t-shirt, quickly flipped inside out under a bailiff's warning, only amplifies the tension between courtroom evidence and familial loyalty. We also spot Ye at the courthouse, though he remains in an overflow room, refusing to answer substantive questions about his relationship with the defendant. Support appearances by high-profile allies can influence public sentiment, but jurors sequestered from media noise are directed to disregard such demonstrations.
So now, I came here to this internet to talk about this dude's character. It's nothing I said that could have landed that dude in jail. Any of those seekers would probably.
After 2 days of discussions, the jury sent a message. They have decisions on 4 of 5 charges, but are still divided on the organized crime conspiracy. Judge Arun Subramanian orders them to keep working. reminding them that complexity is no reason to surrender to partial decisions. We consult sentencing guidelines and confirm that if the panel locks in guilty findings on both trafficking counts and transportation counts, Combs faces a minimum of 15 years and up to life, depending on how the judge views aggravating factors. The racketeering count alone also carries life exposure, so the unresolved question could determine whether Combs might someday walk out of prison or remain incarcerated until his final days.
Or I've heard anybody else say until the federal government came in, because nobody knew, nobody knew before the federal government came in and hit Puff with those charges that any of this would have ever happened.
We find ourselves studying the one juror flagged in an earlier note for allegedly refusing to follow instructions. Court filings identify him only as a 51-year-old veterinarian with a molecular biology background. His analytical nature may push him to dissect legal definitions of enterprise, substance distribution, and coercion down to molecular precision. While defense hopes he holds the line against a sweeping racketeering conviction, prosecutors privately express confidence that additional transcript reviews will clarify lingering doubts. We remain mindful that jury dynamics are notoriously unpredictable, and a single holdout can trigger a mistrial on the top charge. The partial verdict note shakes Combs visibly. Inside the courtroom, he bows his head, folds his hands, and appears to pray while lawyers confer at sidebar. When the session recesses, he mouths "love you" to relatives, taps his heart, and follows marshals down a restricted hallway. Photographers in position catch a glossy reflection of his face through a security glass panel, eyes red, but composure intact. We snap mental pictures, understanding that these images will accompany future retrospectives, whether the outcome becomes a conviction or a miraculous acquittal. As we cover the third day of deliberations, outside speculation intensifies about the rumored blackmail vault. Social media sleuths examine old property management leases, cross-referencing room numbers with hotel purchases under shell companies. Bloggers claim a retired assistant saw stacks of labeled drives in a walk-in safe. None of this is revealed in public proceedings, yet the speculation persists, fueling conjectures that arrangements and silence pacts extended further than the accusers listed in the charges. We maintain skepticism but keep monitoring, because sealed evidence can emerge suddenly at sentencing or during related civil suits.
But I'm going to tell you what I think is going to go down, brother. Because a lot of has gone, and a lot of people who wasn't at the trial or didn't hear the prosecution do what they did would think Diddy might be getting off.
We also check industry reaction. Partners scrub Combs' image from promotional sites, a national fashion retailer postpones a fragrance line tied to his name, and a streaming platform quietly rotates legacy bad boy cuts out of its flagship playlist. Band executives appear unwilling to wait for the verdict, calculating that association risk far outweighs potential revenue. We ask marketing analysts how the final judgment might influence valuations. They tell us that even a reduced sentence leaves a permanent cloud because risk-averse advertisers rarely return once criminal conviction headlines land in search engines.
You know what I'm saying? All this started by what I said, the character of this gentleman, the character of Puff, what he has done over the years to people had nothing to do with Gene Deal.
Meanwhile, discussions about Gene's personal credibility persist. Critics highlight his silence when asked about his own conduct during earlier years. Supporters counter that prosecutors would not rely on him if they found serious wrongdoing in his background checks. We examine public records. He indeed served as a parole officer in New York State before moving into private security. He ran contracts at residential towers, eventually aligning with Bad Boy. Those facts lent him an aura of law-adjacent authority, and we note that his training likely made him comfortable testifying under oath. Yet, unanswered questions linger about stories that have circulated for more than a decade. Stories that could resurface if defense lawyers managed to call him during a potential retrial, should the jury hung on racketeering. For now, the prosecution sticks to documents and other witnesses, limiting Gene's role to media commentary.
They explained everything that Puff did. Diddy, as y'all know him as. Everything he did as far as the trafficking, having people bring him, having people kidnapped, taken from their home, sitting up for hours in warehouses being given polygraph tests.
We glance ahead to sentencing possibilities. If Combs is convicted on transport counts alone, federal guidelines start at about 180 months. But aggravating circumstances, use of company funds, recurrent intimidation, possession of firearms, can push the number higher. A guilty verdict on racketeering unlocks maximum life imprisonment, though judges still weigh mitigating factors. Defense counsel will present philanthropic efforts, parental responsibilities, and absence of prior federal convictions. Prosecutors will present the breadth of alleged coercion, the financial engine behind each act, and witness claims that Combs used bodyguards to silence dissent. Throughout coverage, we remain cautious with language, mindful that final guilt is jurors' domain. Yet even before the verdict, we see lasting cultural consequences. Streaming comment sections debate whether to delete Combs' produced tracks from playlists. Radio programmers quietly replace his collaborations with other 90s-era hits. Aspiring performers who once saw him as an inspiration now cite the trial in cautionary Instagram stories about power imbalances. We recall earlier scandals that reshaped public attitudes, Michael Jackson's posthumous reevaluations, R. Kelly's removal from festival billings, and recognize a similar pivot in real time.
There is a partial verdict in the Diddy case after 2 days. The jury has reached unanimous decisions on 4 of the 5 counts. The problem is that 5th count means that we don't get to find out what the verdicts are on the other 4 because they are hung up on.
By late afternoon of day 3, whispers surface that the jury may work through the holiday weekend if necessary. Some court observers say a quick verdict favors the defense because it suggests resistance to government theory. Others say a longer deliberation means jurors are methodically closing gaps on the toughest charge. We note that speculation often proves wrong, but we document each perspective for comprehensive analysis. While we wait, we revisit the deeper timeline. The fatal Los Angeles drive-by that claimed the notorious B.I.G. in 1997 remains unsolved, and persistent suspicion still floats around Combs' entourage, even without direct evidence. Gene claims his distrust of Combs crystallized that night. He recalls voicing concerns privately for years before going public in 2018. Whether or not his narrative is fully accurate, the tragedy looms as an early fracture line in Combs' mythology, the moment fans realized glamour could coexist with menace. That background amplifies current allegations because they suggest a pattern rather than an isolated lapse.
What's confusing is all of those things that you just said are also included in the racketeering count. So we don't know what the vote is. It's hard to read what they.
We also look at Combs' own behavior during trial. Court sketch artists capture him reading Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking and Sean Akers' The Happiness Advantage. Reporters ask whether the books reflect a man preparing for possible incarceration. Combs offers no comment, but analysts point out that cultivating an image of introspection can influence sentencing judges. We acknowledge the optics, but focus on jurors' evidence requests. Self-help volumes rarely factor into verdicts. After a short recess on the evening of July 2nd, rumors ignite that jurors have signaled movement on racketeering. Court staff declined to confirm. We catalog scenarios. If jurors reach unanimity late tonight, the judge could schedule immediate reading after notifying counsel. If not, deliberations resume post-holiday. For Combs, every extra hour of uncertainty complicates bond arguments and potential appeal filings. For witnesses, the delay prolongs anxiety. For families on both sides, holiday fireworks may feel hollow, while legal futures remain unresolved.
It's probably leaning towards guilt. Now, on the racketeering, I agree with you that the predicate acts may be found, but that's not all they need. There's an ultimate question. The first question on the jury verdict form is, do you find him guilty or not guilty of racketeering? Before you even get to the predicate acts, which you only get to if you find guilt, they could just be hung up on that question and say, this guy's not Tony Soprano. I am not convinced that I even want to find guilt.
We text industry contacts for reaction, and one longtime music publicist tells us, no matter what happens, brands will recalibrate. Even if he walks, the graphic testimony is out there. Executives won't want to explain it at board meetings. That comment underscores a trend we have tracked for years. The reputational market operates on perception as much as law, and once certain allegations attach to a public figure, commercial relationships often sever permanently. We examine social media traffic metrics and observe that trial-related hashtags outperformed several major sports events this week. Live streams of hallway footage, no audio from inside the courtroom allowed, draw hundreds of thousands of concurrent viewers. The line between legal process and reality show entertainment blurs, and critics argue that sensational coverage can distort public understanding. We maintain our journalistic posture, verifying documents, cross-checking quotes, and clearly indicating when a statement is rumor versus exhibit. Yet we also acknowledge that this trial's blend of fame and potential lifetime sentencing is unlike any previous music industry prosecution, and public fascination is inevitable.
It's complicated. There are 8 criminal elements. The jurors only have to prove that two of them, or feel that two of them have been proven in order for him to be found guilty on that racketeering conspiracy, as well as believing that Combs led a criminal enterprise for his sexual desires.
On the dawn of day 4, we gather again, coffee in hand, to see whether deliberations have cracked. Producers remind us the jury can ask additional questions, and each note provides insight into their priorities. When a courier emerges with a blue folder, we hold collective breath, but it contains only a request for testimony about hush agreements signed in 2015. We record the detail, understanding that hush payments, if viewed as obstruction, support racketeering allegations by showing efforts to sustain the enterprise.
The government essentially said that Sean Combs led a criminal enterprise for his sexual desires, that he tried to cover up crimes, that he was the leader of this criminal enterprise, and that he committed at least, at least two, that they believe, of these elements that are part of the racketeering conspiracy.
By early evening, we hear from reliable courthouse staff that jurors have reached a decision on count 1. An official announcement is scheduled for the following morning. We update copy, prepare sidebars on sentencing ranges, and call our desk editors. In the glow of phone screens, we consider Gene Deal's initial proclamation. He'll never walk free again. Within hours, we will know whether that bold statement becomes history or footnote. We stand outside under streetlights, waiting for transport trucks and satellite vans to reposition. A brisk breeze cuts through the city humidity. We contemplate the broader meaning. If criminal justice delivers a life sentence, we may witness an unprecedented post-verdict reckoning across entertainment and corporate sectors. Former collaborators will weigh statements, brands will formalize separations, and streaming services may adjust monetization models. Victims who testified will face the long process of rebuilding away from daily headlines. If the jury declines racketeering while convicting on lesser counts, sentencing still hinges on a range that could eclipse a decade. If a surprise acquittal appears, the questions about moral accountability and civil litigation will not vanish.
They needed to show that there was an agreement, that the organization knew what it was doing, that it was an enterprise, not in law, but in fact, that people understood the object of the enterprise, which was to promote Sean Combs and his brands and sort of fulfill any deviant desires he may have had, and then to cover up any crimes committed over the course of fulfilling those desires.
We wrap our notes and prepare for the next dawn. Soon, a verdict will emerge, and we will either record the downfall of one of hip-hop's most influential moguls, or the narrow survival of a brand bruised beyond repair. Either way, the testimonies heard in this courthouse have redrawn the public understanding of power, celebrity, and control. So as we sign off tonight, we put one last question to you. Will the verdict persuade wider audiences that justice finally reached Sean Combs, or will it spark yet another round of skepticism about whether influence can still outrun the law? Share your views below, and until we return with the official decision, we wish you clarity, vigilance, and a safe night.